Tonight we're here with James Wright, and
Hey, James.
and we also have Steve Stricker here, and Steve's sitting in for Crystal because Crystal and Kaylee are both sick tonight.
Second string. I'll try to hang in here.
Yeah. You don't need to get sick, as all of us here have been getting sick. But James is a trail runner, and he is a YouTuber, and he's been at a lot of the Ornery Mule races. And I noticed him at the Ornery Mule races because he was doing these videos, and I was really wanting to start an Ornery Mule racing YouTube channel. And so I reached out to him to ask advice on how to do it. I didn't know at the time that he was like this big YouTube star with multiple channels. All I knew is he did really great trail videos of the races, and we wanted to know how to do that. And James was, you were really nice. You came over and walked through my packed full house. He got to see it in full on kettle mode.
Quite the experience.
It's getting better. and gave us some advice. So, we wanted to sit down and talk to you a little bit about, about your YouTube show and trail running, both of them. So let's start with, how you started running.
Well, my experience running was a little bit weird. I literally never ran a single mile in my life until I was 30.
Okay.
And then one day I woke up and I said, I'm going to run a marathon.
Wow.
I don't know where it came from, but I, over the course of about 3 months, trained to run a marathon. I ran the marathon and then stopped.
Which marathon was that?
Well, I was going to do, it was one in northern Wisconsin. I don't remember where, but it was canceled due to, there was a weather problem or something. It came in flooding. And so I decided to actually run the marathon inside in a gym and around a basketball court.
Oh, wow.
It was like 350 some laps.
Oh, my God.
Round and round and round. And so I had a timer set to check it. And
did you run the whole
distance.
time?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I ran the marathon, hit my goal, and then said I'm done. And never ran again for like 3 more years.
Okay. Well, maybe it's because you were in a gym running in
Yeah.
a circle.
Well, it was one of those things I had to put on my resume that, I ran a marathon.
Okay.
And so I did that just to do that. And it was one of those things I kept looking back and thinking, it was kind of interesting. It was kind of fun. And then I put on a bunch of weight and lost a bunch of weight. And then I thought, I just need to do this. So I get back into running and started running again. And every distance I got to just wasn't enough, and it wasn't enough, and it wasn't enough. And then I got to a marathon. I was like, that's not enough. Let's try an ultra. And it went on from there. And so that was.
How long ago was this now?
About 3 years ago now.
Okay.
So.
And what was your first ultra?
Black River Falls. It was the inaugural Black River Falls. That was quite the experience.
And where's that at?
It is near La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So up there a ways.
It's a beautiful state forest, and I did a shorter run there. And I was telling James earlier that the first time I seen him was on one of his preview runs because I was running that race, and I found him on YouTube, and I watched his whole accounting. That was your first ultra.
Yeah.
And little different course than what I did. I think I did the 25 K maybe at that one. But
the 25K is the beautiful half of the course.
He's really good at, as you've seen with this, he's really good at describing the course, and he tells the highs and the lows of his experience.
So for your first marathon, did you document, or your first trail race? I mean.
Yeah. Well, the first ultra I did, and I've done most of my long distance running. I've been able to record most of that.
Is that hard?
Not really. Well, whenever I get into a hobby, I start recording it.
Okay.
And so I'll start a YouTube channel about this particular hobby. Most of the time, it's just me documenting stuff for my own sake. And that's what my running channel is mostly. But then for like my woodworking channel, it actually took off and actually became a channel. And that's why I do YouTube now. But because I now have done, almost 2,000 YouTube videos, it's natural. My kids laugh at me because I'm videoing everything that's happening. So if I'm not out on the trail with a camera, something's wrong.
Yeah. What's the name of your company?
What's that?
What's the name of your company?
Well, I have 10 different YouTube channels, but my main my business part is Wood by Wright. Wood by Wright.
Okay.
And then I have another gaming channel. So it's
you got a really cool like WW logo that you use for the woodworking. It's really neat. So I was buying some of that stuff earlier.
The woodwork you do is absolutely unbelievable. I didn't know people did that. And you do it all by hand.
Yeah, well, I've had quite a few people tell me that it's the exact same as ultra running because I'm doing hand tool woodworking the longest, the hardest possible way.
Yeah.
Of doing it.
Okay.
I'll do what most people do
Endurance.
in a day. It takes me a month and a half to do with just a chisel and a hammer.
How did
That's
you get into that
perfect.
hobby or profession, really?
Well, I quit my job and became a stay-at-home dad because my wife was making far more than I could dream of, and I needed a hobby to stay sane because I had 3 kids in 3 years. And that was something I could do quietly in the basement without a danger to the kids. The kids give me the shop because there's no power tools, there's no noise, there's no dust, and I could do it in a small space I had in the basement. And so, like I normally do, I just start videoing things for my own sake, and that then turned into a channel. So
That's really super interesting. When did you start doing it for your races? Like, what made you decide to do that?
well, I mean, I'd been videoing long before I started running, long before I started ultras, and so it was just the same thing for me to keep on going with that.
Did you
And-
expect it to be a channel that people were watching?
No, and it's still not. It's not a huge channel. It's still something I do for my own enjoyment. The running channel is just my own hobby, and it is. I like it that way because then I can make it the way I want to make it, and I can put into it the music that I enjoy and the feelings that I have, as opposed to, what are people wanting me to do.
Oh, so it's more personal rather
Yeah,
than because the other one ended up being kind of a job, I guess, actually, a stay-at-home dad job.
Yeah. And that's really the reason that running to me is my hobby, because my hobby of woodworking became my job. And once a hobby becomes a job, it becomes a job, and you need something else to keep you going and sane.
Yeah.
And running really is that catharsis for me. And so not only the time out on the trail, just letting my brain die, but then having the video making, it's the other half of the hobby for me. So it's really one and the same for me, running and videoing.
Well, people train really hard for ultras, and a lot of times it's, it's something that they've been working on all year. And I'm sure lots of people would like to know how to do videos of what they're doing. What do you use to do that? And
Well, my old ones, I would just get pull it out here. I get my cell phone, and most of the new ones now have such great stabilization. As long as the screen is painted away from you can get a really good image.
okay.
And that works really well, but it's not going to give you that great video that most people want. It's still a little bit shaky. It's still a little bit grainy. And most people aren't going to care about that. But me being a video guy, that started to annoy me. And so then I recently got this, which is an Osmo Pocket. And so it's a full-blown studio. I mean, I can plug this into my phone and edit my videos on my phone. And it's fully stabilized so that when I'm running, it gives me a constant stable image. So no matter what I'm doing, it's yeah.
And are you holding that in your hand, or are you using?
Yeah, and so I can turn around and point at myself,
Yeah.
or I can I can carry it. I have a selfie stick I can put on my waist. Most of the time I can just throw it into here. It's protected, and then literally stuff it into my pocket.
Is that what you use, that kettle, for the
Yes.
Kettle 50K? Because he did the Kettle 50K. There's a really great video. And you got lightning, like, out in the field. Like, I thought he had a film crew with him when I saw it.
It's surprisingly good audio, too.
Yeah.
I did one for Hennepin, too.
And you don't do any
Yeah.
audio enhancement with that? You're just straight off of the mic, right off of that camera?
Yeah, well,
And
when I'm
it's-
running. When I do other things, I have an external mic I can plug in. But for running,
Okay.
I don't want to carry all this equipment, so I just carry this.
And that's light and
Yeah,
yeah.
throws it in my pocket, and it shoots 4K, and it'll even shoot slow-mo. And especially with the control wheel, because I can do pan and tilt and zoom. And
What about, you mentioned lightning, what about like rain and?
I usually just carry a Ziploc bag with it and throw it in there. If it's really downpouring, I'll pull my phone out because my phone's waterproof. But if it's not raining, I pull that out. And so usually I run with both. And like for Hennepin, I did the Hennepin 50K, and it was supposed to be downpouring, and we got there and it was downpouring. We got off the bus and it immediately stopped. And so I was so thankful because I could use that the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a little sensitive to water.
And then do you train with that? Sorry to dominate here.
Oh, no, that's
You
okay.
can see this is
Well,
getting personal, like I'm spying doing this myself.
Steve does
so,
great videos.
Yeah,
I don't.
so I'm just interested in it. So
Yeah.
yeah. So do you train with doing some recording, or do you actually practice running with it in your training? Or
When I first got it, I did a whole bunch of like practice runs. Every time I went out, whether it was a mile or 20 miles, I took it with me and played with it. And there is a little bit of learning because it does have some stabilization that it doesn't do a solid pan very well. There's a few other things that it's just not great at. And so you have to learn that, this shot doesn't work so well, but this shot is awesome. And there's little things like that work into it. But yeah, most of the time, if I'm going to be going out for more than like 20 miles or so, I'll take it and shoot video footage. Or if I'm going to if I'm going out for a sunrise run or a sunset run, and anytime in that time period, the shots are just phenomenal.
Yeah. It says it improves your memory when you shoot photos and videos of things. That logically, right? That you
Did
remember
it help your
things.
racing?
Well, actually, yes. I have gone back and I'll watch my videos and especially for ultra running, because you go through so many phases of running that you're right off the bat and you're gung ho and everything's feeling great, and then you suddenly get to this wall and you have to break through this wall, and then everything's kind of like just drudgery for a while, and then you get to this pain cave, and there's all these things that in the moment they feel so strong and so powerful, and they're just driving you. And when you leave that a day or two later, you've completely forgotten those intense emotions that you had. Well, capturing on the video allows me to remember that. And it keeps it in mind. So when I do get to that pain cave, when I get to that wall, I can remember the video, and I'll remember the video far more than I'll remember the actual time being there, because when I had the video, I'm watching it when I'm sane. Whereas in the moment, I'm not sane. I'm out on the trail.
Yeah.
Right. So it does help that way, and being able to realize that this is normal. It's okay. I've been here before. I can get through it.
And have you ever felt like you wanted to chuck it? Like, are you like mad that you have it because you're frustrated with your running?
No, actually I haven't. I mean, it's so light that most of the time it's like in my pocket, so I'm not thinking about it other than when I'm actually using it.
Maybe I just get frustrated with my gear. Do you ever get frustrated with your gear sometimes?
I do, and I've actually tried to, tape myself some, and sometimes I don't know, it's so much work to be running, to add the extra task of talking about it can get really hard.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there are times where I just want to go out and enjoy a run, and I don't take it with me. Most of my runs, I don't take a camera with me, just because I want that catharsis of just being out on the trail and not thinking about anything. I don't take my phone. I don't take anything with me. I love it when I can't even take my leave my pack and water behind, and I'm just out there by myself. That's when it feels the best. But anytime I'm carrying more luggage, then I just automatically want to take this, because since I'm taking something else, I might as well carry it. And there's always something out on the trail that I'll be coming across and like, ooh, look, a bald eagle.
Yeah.
And just to put a 30-second clip up on Facebook or something like that, it's great to have it on hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have my phone this past weekend on a Sunday run down in St. Louis, and I saw a frosted flower for the first time. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's when this vapor comes out during freezing time, and it was beautiful. It was just this really it looked like a snowflake basically, but bigger.
Yeah.
It's in the ground. And the other runners from St. Louis were, oh, that's a frosted flake or flower. And they took some photos, thankfully, for me. I was mad I didn't have my camera with me. I was like, darn it, I want a picture of that. So, you do have big moments sometimes you want documented.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I look back at my videos, I hear what you're saying, because you don't remember it till you look back at those pictures and those videos. So, everybody should get one of those.
It's fun.
It makes it so. One of the things that I do like about it is when you're out on the trail and you have that monotony moment where you're just running and you're getting to the next aid station and nothing's going wrong. That's when the thought clicks in my brain, hey, maybe I should pull the camera out and talk. It allows me to think through the situation and think through where I'm at, where I'm going, what is my goal, why am I here, and I can talk to the camera. There's no one else around, and I need to get that off my brain. That's something that does help.
So you're a stay-at-home dad. Your wife works. When do you train?
That's a really good question. Whenever I can, there are times where weeks on end, all I'm doing are night runs. My wife came home and she put the kids to bed and she went to bed, so then I go out and run. And there are other times where the only way I can get a long run is if I bump my regular work off and I run while she's at work and the kids are at school, and I can get out and do it now.
Oh, so how old are your kids?
They are 6, 8, and 9 now.
Wow.
So yeah.
Well, that's good that you got a few hours while they're at school. But then in the summertime, when a lot of people are really training.
Yeah, in the summertime, it's almost impossible. I mean, our local YMCA has a 3-hour child watch, so I can do 3 hours with them, and they let us run on the track out in front of the property, which is nice, but it's completely flat.
But you get your training in.
Yeah, I can get the time in at least.
Yeah.
Or go to the treadmill, throw up some elevation on that.
What trails do you run on?
I am about 2 miles away from Rockford State Park.
Oh, I love Rockford.
That's a great place. I mean, I went out there and did 26 the other day and barely went on the same trail twice. There's always a different thing around the corner, so there's a lot of different fun places.
You run with that group over there, the
Coyotes? Oh, yeah.
Well,
whenever I can. It's rare that I can mesh my times with them. But,
it's a great trail community in Rockford area.
Yeah, James helps out. You help them at their races. I mean, I remember you marking that course that was underwater.
Yes.
Well, tell us about that race.
Hobo Triple Crown. It has it's
well known.
It's a 10K on the first day, a 25K on Saturday, and then a 50K on Sunday.
It's a very old race. It's where a lot of people got their first. It's where I figured he did his first race.
Yeah, and so we had the 10K. We were normally at Rock Cut, but because of the bridge construction, we had to move it to a different park. So we moved the 10K to another place. It was kind of nice. But for the 25K and the 50K, usually we do a 25K loop, and then the second day we do the same loop twice. Well, the park we moved it to, we couldn't quite get that, but we could get about half the distance. So we would do the 2 loops on the first day and then 4 loops on the second day. So we marked out that course. But as we were marking out the course, it was still raining and the water was starting to rise. And by the time we got to the end of the course, we found out we couldn't complete it. And so we had to cut it shorter from, 12K down to like a 6-mile course. And then that night, we found out the water rose even more and we had to cut it down again. And we cut it down to, it was like a 2-mile out and back and then a 1.5 miles out and back, something like that. And we had to do it like 5 times each direction.
No wonder you remember it.
Then I went out early that morning before the race and I went and did the course once by myself and staked it all out. And then came back and we all went out and did the first course. Well, by the time we got to the first course, the last, it was about 1/10 of a mile or so was flooded. And it was almost dry. It was like ankle deep at the deepest spot. Well, it got up to about knee deep by the time we got out on the first pass. And the second pass, it was longer and deeper.
Wow.
And by the third pass, most people, it was well over their waist. And it was a 1/4 mile of track, waist deep water.
Wow.
And it was the endurance, water wading through that. And I mean, even the people who were cruising, doing, immense speeds were just, you couldn't run. I mean, everyone was going at like, a 40-minute mile pace. It was, it was a memorable
What a
race.
trail tale.
Yeah,
Wow.
It was really. But trail runners are so gracious, and it just made it a more interesting story for the next.
Oh, and
50
everyone
years
was
of their life.
smiling because it was on the out and back section because you passed people coming the other direction. And everyone was just it was the memorable point that it was great. You're never gonna get to do that again.
Right. Yeah, I added a creek crossing at my Arbor Ridge Trail race this past year, and I didn't have it the first year. And there were a few people that had never run a creek crossing, and they were a little, miffed at me for doing that and adding that. And but then after the race, that's all everybody talked about was the creek crossing. Like the rest of the mileage didn't matter. All they cared about was that experience of that organic experience, right? Of being in touch with nature, like right involved at the creek. So
That's always like if ever someone dies on a course, well, then the race gets bigger next year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Gnarly they get.
Do you have any races coming up that you're training for?
I'm going to be doing Frozen Otter.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So looking forward to that.
So how are you training for that? Like, what are you doing special?
Nothing really special. It's 100K in the winter, but there really isn't too much other than it's carrying a pack. So most of my distances, I'm trying to carry a pack. I'm going to be going up to northern Canada early January, so I'm going to be doing my big long weekend. Hopefully up where it's like -30, -40. So that should be kind of interesting.
And have you done some intel on that type of running before, running in the winter time? And
Well, yes and no. I mean, I haven't had much experience running in the snow other than what I've done. But snow and cold are something that I thoroughly enjoy, so it's not as much of a problem to me because I'm from northern Michigan and Alaska. So
on our podcast with Ryan, he gives quite a bit of information about running.
Yeah, you'll have to hear that. Are you running with somebody?
Not directly. I have a few people who will probably be around my pace and we'll probably leapfrog each other. But
Do you like to run with people at races?
I like to, but there's few people who run as slow as I do. So
That's okay. You get all your money for the course.
They'll be out there a long time. That's as much accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
The longer you're out.
Yeah, my goal is that I have to be out there at least 18 hours. If I'm not out there at least 18 hours, then it won't be my longest run. So I gotta break the record on this one.
Nice.
Well, a lot of people do 18-hour 100Ks.
Yeah.
And you got a big
This
old
one,
pack
it
on.
won't be a problem. Somewhere between 18 and 24. That's my goal.
And you do recordings before races and stuff too, right? Like when you're going to the race, you kind of document the whole experience.
Yeah,
And,
I try and get the whole feeling of the race. So from waking up that morning, what's going through your mind when you're packing things, because every race is a little bit different. Like on the Hennepin 50K, I really didn't train for that one at all. It was just let's go run a 50K. And so it was a very different mindset for me on that, and being able to capture that in the video was part of it.
And you worked at the Coyote aid station
Yeah,
all day
and
the
that one I really wanted to capture more of the whole Hennepin experience rather than just the 50K. So I wanted to show the start of the 100K. I want the start of the 100-mile. I wanted to show the aid station and volunteering there. And then I stayed at the finish line overnight and woke up so I could get the people finishing right at the 24-hour line. And that was kind of a fun way to encapsulate the whole experience rather than just the 50K.
So before you came to the race, you had this all planned out kind of in your head. So is that easy for you to do?
Yeah, it's something you just have to. I have like this mental list of shots that I need to accomplish. So just like in a regular video, you'd have a whole list of things written out and how the frames are set up and all that. I kind of do that for it, but that's something that only comes after doing a lot of videos, because most of the time, especially with something organic like a race, you're rarely going to get what you're expecting.
Yeah.
And so it's more or less just trying to capture an expected moment, but being flexible enough that when that unexpected moment comes, you can still capture that too.
That's neat. I saw you on the bus to the Hennepin 50K. So I didn't realize you had been up all day, right? Documenting the starts of the earlier races and stuff. So, but I noticed you were doing a little footage, on the bus. You were documenting a few things on the way there. So did you run into Camille there at the beginning? Haran?
I don't think I did.
Okay. Yeah. She was kind of incognito a little bit at first, but she was,
No, I can tell.
started. Yeah, she kind of came out right before the start, and I was able to snag her for a moment and get a picture with her. But,
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
so it's just kind of interesting how you document the whole thing, not just the run itself. So it's the full experience, isn't it? Running.
Yeah. I try to break it up into, because I like to watch just music and scenery and the flow, and those are very enjoyable to watch, but a lot of times I want to actually also include the mindset, what else is happening around, the memory points. And so being able to balance the talking where I'm communicating with the camera, as opposed to let's just show people running by and the cool shots of scenery and feet and traffic. Being able to balance those two is I think the hardest part of making a running video, to have that documentary style that's still watchable but still contains information.
I appreciate how it's just like a hobby for you, right? Initially, right?
The running one.
Well, the running one's a hobby.
Correct. So did you ever study any other of these filmmakers, YouTubers who do running, like Billy Yang films? Or
I try not to.
Okay.
I watch them, but I don't. I try not to study how they do it, because I like to. I kind of pride myself on making a video style that is me, what I like, as opposed to what other people have done. And so I try to fumble through things and make mistakes and learn from my own mistakes. I don't like to have my mistakes already made for me, because often that will show me a different way to go that other people haven't done. And especially in my other YouTube channels, that's one of the things that I try to make differently from other similar channels, is because I've done it. I've made different mistakes that they have made, and rather than learning the same way that they've done it.
That's really organic.
Yeah, that's very
It's
interesting.
like a trail version of making videos. You know? Like you just learn on the go and figure it out yourself.
I mean, I've always felt that you have to make your own mistakes.
Yeah.
You learn the most from that, because eventually it's going to catch up to you. You'll know it much better. You're going to make it later on if somebody teaches it to you.
Yeah. I mean, even like on my woodworking channel, if when I started the woodworking channel, it was just me shooting dumb videos for myself. But I've left all those videos up so that when someone can go and see, now they have, there's a professionally shot video that you're expecting to see on how-to on YouTube. You can actually go back and watch the old videos where I was fumbling through things and learning things. And I try to keep it that way so that people see it's not just someone who knows what they're doing and sticking a camera out there. There's a whole learning process involved.
Yeah, you gave me that advice when you came over, because we struggled when we started the YouTube channel. We struggled. We'd tape something and find out we have no sound when we were all done, and all of our stuff is shaky. We were hitting the table and everything was moving. And I'm like, should I take those videos down because they're not very good? And you go, no, 'cause people like to see where you came from. Yeah. And I thought that was good, and it's good for me to look at and remind. Not that, but also that said, you probably don't really want to be quite called out yet that you helped us, because right now we're still at the very beginning and making mistakes and figuring them out.
I'm loving it.
Well, good, thank you.
Yeah, I was shooting a little footage for our Ornery Mule Mountain Challenge that we're going to have in May at Chestnut Mountain over near Galena. And I didn't know anything about recording. I just used my phone. And I told Michele, I'm just going to take my phone. And she said, well, that's not going to work. Like, it's not going to be stable enough. I'm like, oh, it'll probably work.
Because I know, because James told me.
She's like, I've got a better camera than that. And so, yeah, it definitely a learning curve, though, like you said. And I won't make that mistake again, like you're saying.
He did a good video, though. Oh, you saw it. Steve did that.
I had to clip it a lot, as you noticed, because parts of it weren't very good.
You made the shaky stuff work.
Yeah. That adds to the challenge, right? So you got to come over and do that one.
I'm looking for it, yeah.
One of these vertical races, so.
That's really what I was. Well, when I first looked at Galena Sky, I'm like, "Ooh, yes! Does that mean we get to go up and down the hill all day long?" It's like, yes, this is what I'm looking forward to. And then we were all at the top.
Yeah, and it's not that hilly, really. I know. There was people that said, I thought I was going to get to run all the way down to the bottom of the hill, down by the Mississippi River.
Well, we'll give them a taste of that.
But
now.
they're gonna wish that they didn't want that.
Hey, it's a vertical going up, so yeah, we take them all the way down. So they're going to get to ride up. If you haven't previewed that, they're going to get to ride up the ski lift, and then they'll jump off the ski lift, and that's where the timing mat will be, and they'll start. So they get to dash down the mountain, but then they have to turn around and somehow try to hike up.
So is it just the one loop?
Just the one loop, yeah. It'd be 1.5 miles-ish. probably. So.
And it'll be kind of interesting for the fast people because usually they know who they're racing. But, they can be, and, they know how much energy they can put out. But they're going to have no idea because everybody's starting at different times. So,
Yeah, I mean,
I think you're going to
everyone's
have
on
to
the
stay
chair.
into
I
it.
see. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be kind of like a wave start in a
Yeah.
way. And people can choose. They can go up with a group of 4 and take off together. Or if they want to go solo and take off on their own, they can. So there's a lot of different dynamics, where and they'll spy each other on the ski lift. Because you actually ride down the ski lift. You're going to board at the top. And so you get to ride down. You get to see the whole course on the way down. But this is by design, by the way, so that they kind of psych them out, peaceful ride, and then they're getting hit with it on the way up when they climb back up the hill. So
that sounds
be fun.
Kind of
race. Yeah.
I was on the Kettle Moraine. I was running with. Oh my word! I lost his name now.
For the 50K?
Yeah.
Ethan?
Ethan, there we are.
Yep.
And he on flat is just incredibly fast. And I just couldn't keep up with him on that. And so the two of us were joking the whole time because, anytime we came to a hill, I had no problem. But anytime in the flat, he'd go. So he's planning on doing the Hennepin 50.
Oh, good.
And we're trying to find someone who can keep up with him for...
Yeah, because he's going to fly it down. And it's even slightly downhill the first 50 miles of that course.
He's going to kill that one.
So what kind of pace? So anybody watching, do they want to pace Ethan?
I think Greg is going to do it again, but he's got to.
He's going to have to train up for it.
Have you ever shot footage of another runner?
Well,
just yourself.
I did the 50K with Ethan and Greg.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
I'm sorry. I missed that. Okay.
But rarely am I with any one particular, and so there's usually 2 or 3 people who will pop up that I'm leapfrogging throughout a race, but most of the time it's just me or whoever else I might be around.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we're going to have them on the podcast later, and they're going to tell their story.
Yeah.
So, coming down the line, so stay tuned, everyone.
So let's hear a little bit more about your woodworking one. How does that, because it's fascinating to me, and I'm not a woodworker, even though when I keep giving my husband jobs, and I'm like, well, just watch James' channel, and then you'll know how to. So tell us about this and where to find it.
Well, originally the channel was me keeping track of what I was doing, and then it slowly morphed into how-to hand tools. Because there are a lot of people who have computer jobs and things of that nature, and they just want to get home and they want to do something with their hands. They want something that you can make with your own hands without the noise, without power tools. And hand tools are really a way to do that because you're focusing on the work as opposed to the completion. So you get the enjoyment of the step-by-step process.
And so what kind of things do you make?
Oh, anything. Like I made a 13-foot dining room table, dressers, bed table, knickknacks and toys, and hundreds of projects over the years.
Do you design it in your head, or do you see other stuff that inspires you?
Oh yeah, I get inspiration from all over the place. Literally all over the place, and I'll have 5 or 6 projects that are running around in the back of my brain, and I'll slowly work on them over the years until I come to a design of I want to do this, and then I'll go to the computer and make a design that I can then give to other people because other people can't quite see what's in my brain. But rarely do I actually work off of the blueprints that I make. Most of the time they're off of what's in my head.
Okay.
The blueprints just happen to match what I made, so other people can build along.
Okay.
But most of my videos were how-to, so that people could do step-by-step. But recently I split it into 2 separate channels. So I have Wood by Wright, the main one, which is, I'm finding there are a lot of people around the world who just like to watch people make stuff.
Wow.
And so it's just making with hand tools set to music. And it's very relaxing, and people tell me all the time that they watch this to go to bed. But then I have a second channel, Wood by Wright 2, where I'll do the exact same video, but then I'll talk through the process. I'm doing this for this reason, and I'm using this tool to make this. And so I have a lot of people who watch the fun videos, who like just watching someone do it, but then they think, oh, I want to try that. And so they can go over to the second channel and actually get the how-to stuff on it. It's kind of
So somebody that has no experience at all, you think they can watch that and
oh yeah,
jump in and Which do you have a particular show that you would recommend as the first one to watch?
Honestly, one of the things about woodworking is it doesn't matter what you start with.
Okay.
If you wanted to make a Queen Anne highboy as your first project, great, go for it. Because no matter what you do, you have to learn this step. And so you learn this step by doing this step. And then you have to learn the next step. Well, the best way to learn that step is to do it. And with woodworking, I can talk about it all day long. I can show you all day long. I can give you every book on the topic. But until you actually pick up the tool and try the project, you'll never learn anything. And so it's, just like running, you're never going to do it. You're never going to learn it unless you actually do it. And so the best way to learn is to pick a project that interests you.
Well, you're really putting yourself out there with a craft. I'm sure there's a lot of craftsmen, right, that are really into this. Do people critique you? And,
Oh yeah.
And is that good usually, and you're okay with that, or is there some trolls out there that come at you?
It's YouTube. There's trolls.
Yeah.
We actually got a thumbs down on the firemen. Like, who thumbs down a fireman?
Oh, yeah.
Those people are evil.
No, especially with hand tool woodworking, because there are so many traditions. There's the East Coast tradition. You've got the Japanese tradition. You've got the English tradition. You got the French tradition. And so every one of those have the way to use a chisel, and this is the correct way. And if you do it any other way, then you're doing it wrong. And so there's a lot of that on there. But most of the time, there really isn't a wrong way. It's just, are you using the chisel? Then good. Are you, do you still have all your fingers? Good. You're good. Keep going.
Are you getting the job done?
Yeah, but then there's probably the upside, though, where they're not critiquing you and people are probably complimenting you on things they learned, people that are into the field.
Yeah.
A professional conversation that happens.
Particularly on my channel, I make a point of telling people I'm not a fine woodworker. I am not a master craftsman. I'm a guy in the shop tinkering around and doing something that I enjoy and love. And I'm going to make mistakes, and I try and show those in the video anytime I mess up on something. I made a mistake here. This is what I'm going to do to learn. And it's a way that other people can see, oh, yeah, maybe I shouldn't do that too. And so I try to keep it as down to earth as possible. And I think that's one of the things I like about YouTube is when you find someone who's real and they show their problems and how life comes into it, it just makes it far more understandable than the perfectionist who just shows you perfect things.
Yeah. And your followers know that you run as well, right? You talk about that at times.
No, I have a lot of crossover followers because I have a channel for making an airplane, I have a channel for running, I have a channel for real estate, I have a channel for business investment, I have my own family channel, I have my gaming channel, and so then I have other people who follow me on multiple channels and like, oh, you do that too, and it's kind of fun to find people who have multiple hobbies that fit together, and there's a lot of running woodworkers out there. It's kind of fun to come into.
Yeah. And I think that you're making new ones.
Oh, yeah.
And how you approach it really explains something I thought I had about how you can put yourself out running in, really vulnerable position. You're showing people your struggles with running. And but it sounds like you already do that with your woodworking. You kind of really make yourself vulnerable, expose yourself, and learn from the mistakes, like you said. So
yeah.
That's admirable. I mean, I know people that run who won't even tell people they're doing the race. Like because they don't want the backlash if they DNF or whatever.
Yeah, they're so afraid of failing.
Right. But you've got this kind of chill attitude where I'm just going to go for it and let chips fall where they may. So I respect that. That's really cool.
Actually, I have a video on I did 2 years ago. I did hobo. I did the 10K. I did the 25K, but about halfway through the 25K, my ankle just totally flared up on me. I pushed through it and finished it. It took me I think it was 5 hours to complete the 25K. And I was walking backwards for a large chunk of it. And I got to the end and my ankle was just totally trashed. And so the next day I wasn't able to do the 50K. And so I had to DNF on that. I made sure to DNF. I made sure to start it, and I did, 50 feet or so, and then came back to the start. So I didn't get a DNS. But then I was able to do in the video. Well, I didn't do that. Well, now that means I get to go volunteer, and so I was able to then work that
sweet.
into the.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Do you volunteer often at races? I know you did the course marking and stuff, but
I try to, particularly because of having all the kids and timeline, I don't get a lot of time to volunteer at the bigger ultra races where I have to go somewhere for it. I'd like to do that more, but I try and do a lot more of the local races because I try and do around 40 to 45 races a year, most of those being the 5K, the 10K, the local race series at our running road running group. And I try and volunteer as many of those as possible and try and bolster the local running group as opposed to going out to the bigger races. But once the kids are gone, I'll be doing a lot more.
There is life after.
And
or once the kids are old enough, I can take them like, hey, you're doing an aid station.
Yeah. Yeah, my kids do that.
Yeah, my youngest.
They're voluntold.
Yeah, my kids are real involved too, as you know.
Yeah.
My races too. And my youngest is going to be 18 in April. So, and you do have a lot more time at that point. I always say that endurance running is the old person's sport because you have more time when you're older. Mm-hmm. And whenever I'm trying to get younger people to get into the race, into running endurance, I realize when I'm talking to them that they have kids and stuff. They don't have time to do this. So
yeah.
I kind of forget. I should have documented that.
Yeah.
those tough years.
But that's why I do a lot of the 5K and 10Ks. I can now do it with my kids. And so my two oldest have started doing those with me, and they're in the local cross country group. And so if I go out and do a 5K, two of them will do it with me, and I'll possibly be getting the third one into doing 5Ks this year. So.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, that's fun.
You're being a good example for them.
It also makes it much easier for me because then I'm not pushed to push a 5K. I'm like, oh, I'm running with my kids. I'm going to do this a little slower.
Yeah, yeah, 5Ks are tough.
Faster, then we'll see.
I'm going to make sure nobody gets left behind.
No, it won't be much longer. My daughter will be trashing me. So,
so we said we posted on Facebook that you were going to be on the show, and we asked people to ask a question. I forgot to write down the name of the person that asked, but somebody asked to ask you what the best advice for a new runner is.
Don't worry about the problems. Problems will come. That's good advice in any hobby or endeavor. But I think with running particularly, especially while you're building the mileage, there's always that point of, wow, I can't get any farther than this. I've done, I ran my first 3K, and anything I run longer than that, I'm running into problems. Well, there's always going to be another wall. There's always going to be another wall. And running is about breaking through those walls. So focus on breaking through. Don't focus on the wall itself. Okay,
well, good advice.
Great advice.
Well, thank you for coming out.
Thanks. Yeah, this has been very... I've learned a lot.
We're definitely learning. Yeah, we want to know more and pick your brain and help. And I think that the
I
people
wanted to pull out my phone and start watching the videos. Yeah, while he was talking about it. Like, I want to see this woodworking stuff. So I will do that. So that's great. Yeah, we'll be sure to post his YouTube channels.
Yeah.
At the end of the podcast.
Yeah, I did. I guess I did. I still didn't know you had that many channels. And so we'll add links. So anybody listening will have links on the YouTube page to your channels. And we'll also post it on the Ornery Mule Racing Facebook page.
Cool.
Fearless videographer. That's you. Yeah.
You'll probably be getting a few odd comments from other people in gaming and woodworking. So,
well, my daughter and son are into gaming, so I keep meaning to send them your YouTube. So I'll be glad to have the link to it to have them take a look at it.
Well, thanks, James.
Cool.
Yep,
My pleasure. This has been fun.
Yep.
Great meeting you.